did, point blank question, did Yahweh impregnate Eve? Your book gets into something like this as well. So it sounds like the language implies
there is the potential to wonder as to whether there is lying behind that story of Eve. Is there basically goddess myths? I mean, she shares, she is the mother of all living, which is a title that's very similar to a title of Yahweh, of Aal's wife, who later becomes Yahweh's wife, if you like, at Ugarit. She seems, her close association with this tree of life. We know that the tree of life was an important motif within goddess cultures and iconographies. So you kind of look like this is interesting. There looks like there's something behind here. What we have in the text is that she is very much cast as a human. She's cast as a creature. She is a creature of God. She's created by the deity from Adam. But there's a very interesting, in chapter 4, verse 1, we're told that Adam knew his wife, which is again a euphemism, a sexual euphemism. But what she says is so striking, because Eve says, "I have," and the Hebrew is normally translated as I have gotten a man with the help of Yahweh. But actually the Hebrew is much more accurately translated as I have created or even procreated a man with Yahweh. It's using a particular Hebrew root that has a cognate in Ugaritic, which is the language, and that's the word that a lot of goddesses use in talking about this kind of the perpetuation, the creation and perpetuation of life. So it's interesting. So it's kind of, it hints at a backstory. So I'm not saying yes, that's what it definitely says in the text. I'm saying it hints at an interesting backstory, perhaps, that perhaps Yahweh fathered the first child. I mean, Yahweh is a fertility god. Yahweh fathers other children much more comfortably, theologically within the Hebrew Bible. He has this daughter who is kind of born from his wet breath, this wisdom goddess-like figure, in the book of Proverbs, for example, and that's picked up in later Jewish texts as well. There's lovely poetry in, again, the book of Deuteronomy that talks about him fathering a child called Jeshurun, who he looks after in the wilderness, and he holds and gazes at this child. The image conjured in the poetry is gorgeous. He's looking at this child so intently, and he says, "You became what's normally translated as, this little boy was the apple of my eye." That's, we use an English idiom to render a Hebrew idiom, which much more literally means, "I gazed upon you like the little man in my eyes." So it's referring to that little reflection. You can see, when you're like up close, really close to something, you can see yourself reflected in someone's eyeball. Mm-hmm. That's that image. It's God's eyeball. It's like he can see this little child imprinted. I mean, it's a beautiful, touching kind of image of this very tender, intimate parental scene. So yeah, there are other instances where, Yahweh has children.